We are luminous figure painters. Welcome. This is my first video in a long time. I'm happy to be back in the painting seat, and I can't wait to show you this painting tutorial dedicated to the Leagues of Votann. The faction known as the Kronus Hegemony is what we'll be doing today. So, without further ado, let's get rolling. First, we'll start off with a couple layers of black primer from Viejo Acrylics. So we'll let that dry, and then using our airbrush, mine is a Badger Renegade Chrome, spraying at about 20 psi, I'll lay down 2 to 3 thin coats of Pro Acrylics Yellow Ochre. The great thing about Monument Hobbies paints is their pigment density, so you don't have to blow down a billion layers to get yellow to stick. I highly recommend these paints if you haven't tried them. They're very nice. So after that's laid down and opaque, we're going to go and spray Citadel's Carroburg Crimson into the shades to give the yellow just a bit more depth and warmth. Seeing as how this is really the only bright and saturated color in the whole scheme, we might as well give it some love. Just build it up in a couple of layers. After that's done, we're going to come in with some slightly thin bold titanium white from Pro Acryl and highlight the tops of this cloth with some light stippling. You can build this up a little bit to give the clothes some texture and pop it out a bit. After that, we'll glaze over the white with a little warm yellow from Pro Acryl. The reason we have to do this is that yellow is notoriously a very transparent paint because of the chemicals used, so a pre-shade, so to speak, will make subsequent layers work that much better. After you're satisfied with the look of your yellow, you can go ahead and thin out some of Citadel's Cassandora Yellow, the yellow shade. You're going to thin that about 2 to 1, thinner to paint, and then we can move on to the black armor. Okay, so we're going to start blocking out the black armor with Pro Acryl Black. 1 to 2 coats will do it because, as I said, these paints have great pigment density. Then we'll get blue-black from Pro Acryl, some sponge foam and reverse tweezers, and just go to town. Then we'll get blue-black from Pro Acryl, some sponge foam and reverse tweezers, and just go to town stippling that color on. There you go. This is just to give the armor a little bit of texture, and to do that you want to make sure and thin out the blue-black just a little, and make the coverage a little sporadic. Okay, when you're satisfied with that, you can get out your decals, some decal fixer and decal softener. Cut out those decals with a sharper knife than I had, and soak them in some water and decal softener for about a minute. While you let that soak, you can brush on some gloss varnish and or some decal fix to the shoulder pads that'll house the insignia and squad numbers. Okay, so your decals should easily slip off the paper now, so you can carefully transfer them to the model. Just line them up nicely. And again, do as I say, not as I do. So when you're satisfied, you can go ahead and smooth out the decal with more softener and brush on a little matte varnish from Vallejo Model Color. Reason we do that is to eliminate the outer lines of the decals, which will show through and kind of throw it off. Okay, we're going to go and get that blue-black again and mix it with Citadel's Rakarth Flesh to get a nice light gray blue. Dab off most of the paint from the sponge and lightly apply some chips over the decals and the edges of your armor. Okay, now go ahead and grab a fine brush and some burnt orange from Pro Acryl and fill in the tops of those chips for a rusty look. This will make your armor look just a tad more three-dimensional. If you're feeling extra, you can brighten up your Rakarth and blue-black mix and give an extra highlight to those chips underneath the orange. Okay, now we'll start working on the other details, which are going to be much more straightforward and simplified. First, you can get 1 to 2 thin layers of Citadel's Rakarth flesh on the face. Then we can follow that up with some slightly thinned out Druchii Violet from Citadel. We really just want to hit the get the hint of purple in this face, and we're going to layer pale skin over it. So now, if you're noticing that violet and yellow are natural complementary colors, you get a gold star. There's a lot of warmth in this scheme, so I wanted to play cold purple flesh off of that. I think it works nicely. So now you've got some sickly looking purple skin. You can layer some Rakarth flesh, thinned out a little, and after that highlight with pallid witch flesh. Simple sickly skin in 3 paints. Okay, onto the leathers. We'll apply these 2 implements really simply. Base out the belt, gloves, and holster, and also if the model has a mustache or beard, in Pro Acryl's black brown, and the elbow and knee pads in Pro Acryl's dark flesh. When that's done, we can go ahead and mix those base colors with that yellow ochre that we used, about 50-50, and simply just edge highlight them. Mixing in colors used elsewhere creates a sort of harmony throughout the scheme. If you want a little more pop, mix Citadel's Rakarth flesh, again a paint we've used elsewhere, into those blends and stipple on some more paint. Our next step is going to be blocking out the metallics with a little bit of Vallejo Metal Colors Burnt Iron. I painted the backpack, the gun, the battery pack on the gun, and some of those little tubes and little gadgets that stick out on the whole model. Oh, and don't forget the carabiner, and if you're into it, you can make your dwarf a cyborg like I did by painting the left side of his head. So now I'm going to show you how I like to paint some worn implements that are also supposed to be painted metal. So you've got something that is metal painted over with a non-metallic, and then through wear and tear you've started to show the metal underneath. So we'll get a couple of layers of burnt red followed by bold Pyrrole red from Pro Acryl. 1 to 2 thin layers of each will do it. Okay, and when that's done, I'll gently rub off that paint with some isopropyl alcohol on a cotton swab to show the metal beneath. This is just an easy way of showing off some equipment's weathering. After that's done, let's paint the copper bits with Vallejo Metal Colors Copper, which you'll see here, and then give all of those metallics a wash of Citadel's Nuln Oil, thinned out 50-50 with water or thinner, which you're going to see right now. Our next step is going to be blocking out the glow for future use, and we're just kind of thinking ahead. You want to avoid these areas when you're applying enamels, or else you'll have a hard time getting this white to stick later. So here I used Pro Acryl Bold Titanium White. Thin it out for the recessed glow bits like I had on the gun, as you can see in there. Boom. Okay, now let's get some rust on his black armor and the metallics. I have to admit, I think I went with the wrong color in my opinion, which is light rust wash from Ammo by MiG. If I were doing it again, I would use something like streaking rust or dark rust deposits thinned out a bit more with white spirits. You live and learn, and everything turned out okay in the end, so no big deal. It's just about figuring out what you like and don't like. So anyway, I blew this dry with a blow dryer and then started to remove that rust with a brush loaded with white spirits. This is the reductive technique. I was really trying to get quite a lot of it off, so I repeated the drying and removing until I was satisfied. You don't always get the idea of what these paints are going to look like until they're dried, and they'll dry matte, so make sure your paints look right before you move on from this step. Okay, so after I was satisfied with the weathering, I went ahead and applied another wash over everything except the face and the white spots, and then removed those with white spirits and a Q-tip again. And the color I used was Blue Wash for Panzer Gray from Ammo by MiG. After that, we're going to go over the highlights again, just those raw metal chips with Vallejo Metal Color Silver. This is just to bring out that last bit of brightness on another otherwise dark colored armor. Then we're going to go ahead and apply some verdigris to that battery pack that we had with Citadel's Typhus Corrosion. And we're going to follow that up with a glaze of Neoloc Oxide, thinned down just about 50-50 with water. Last thing we're going to do today is block out that glow that so many people like to see. Since we avoided the white with our enamels, it's going to be a lot easier to get a nice OSL effect. But if you accidentally got some on there, go ahead and drop in the white now. Oh, and don't forget the dude's bionic eye. With that out of the way, we're going to come in with some transparent ink, Baal Red from Citadel. We're going to concentrate this color over, then away from the source of light. So very light white in the center, a thin glaze, more saturated the further away you get. If we've let it get a little too saturated there, we can just sop up a little of that ink quickly with a damp brush. Next, we'll get a little thinner into our white again and re-establish that source of white, and then establish the reflections like the hand or the gun parts that are close by. The very last step is to glaze over that with Fluorescent Red Ink from Dalaroni. You can do this on the source of light and the reflections, and then just glaze a little bit of that Baal Red on the reflections to quiet them down a little. Okay, now that that's all figured out, we can seal up the model with a varnish if you prefer to do so, and baste it up to your liking. Alright, that's a wrap. I hope you liked this video and found it educational. Thanks for watching. If you can do me a huge favor and like, comment, subscribe, or share with your friends, that would be awesome. I'm planning on doing a couple more Votann videos and want to roll out a membership program like Patreon or some such, in addition to my regular content. So, cool things on the horizon. Until next time, have a safe journey and make sure to bring a light.